NFL free agency is right around the corner. And today we're going to be looking at the top free agents across the league and where are they going to be playing in 2025. Don't forget to drop your predictions in the comments section. I get back to you guys as quickly as I possibly can. And outside of that, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. Myles Garrett is no doubt the most talented and the overall best player on the market this offseason, potentially. And I say potentially because I don't think that the Browns front office is going to give in to Myles Garrett's request. Look, I'm a Browns fan. This organization is a mess. We need to fix a lot of things. But the first thing is, of course, the relationship with Myles Garrett. I do think that they hashed this out. I do think that the asking price will be too great for teams to give in and trade for Myles Garrett. So I think the Browns are going to actually hash this out. He'll be back in uniform in Cleveland next season. But if he is going to be traded, I do think that it's going to be on an NFC team. And then it kind of narrows down to the two. It's either Philadelphia or, hey, it's Washington. I know Atlanta could get in the mix, but I think it's going to be a contending team on the NFC side. So that brings it down to the NFC East division. And to me, I honestly think that the rich get richer. I think he's going to end up in Philadelphia. They have the draft capital. They have the youth. They have the experience. And hey, they just won a Super Bowl. So all the things that Myles wants in an organization, they have. And if he goes there, the Browns are going to get a nice draft capital package in return. And hey, we're going to be able to reset here with a couple first round picks, as well as maybe a young piece or two. Who knows? Maybe we get Josh Sweat in a sign and trade kind of a thing, though that is an NBA kind of a practice. But for Myles Garrett, I think he stays in a Browns uniform. If not, he's going to Philadelphia to play for the reigning, defending Super Bowl champions. Trey Hendrickson had one of the most underrated seasons in the last 5 years because I don't feel like anybody talks about him. He had 17 and a half sacks, by far and away led the NFL, and nobody is talking about him as a pending free agent because he's going to be a big boost to any team that decides to pay him. At 30 years old, he still has 45 good years left, hopefully. And outside of that, hey, this is a guy that's on the market really for the first time in his career. But I do think he stays in Cincinnati. And as you can see so far, I do think it's going to be a boring free agency. I don't think we see a lot of stars switch teams like we did last offseason. But that's why I have the next best option. That's why I also want to give you guys a fun option. If they were to leave town, I do think, hey, Trey Hendrickson, he's not going to end up at Philly because that's where Myles Garrett is. But Washington, they're going to add a piece. They're not going to let Philadelphia continue to get this rich without getting better themselves. And of course, Debo is not the last piece to the puzzle. On the defensive end, we need some help on the edge. We have, of course, a great interior with guys like Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Johnny Newton out of Illinois from last year's draft. And on the edge, of course, we have Montez Sweat, who led the team in sacks. But we have over $70 million in cap space. And to pay a guy like Trey Hendrickson, let's say 15 to 25 a year, that's going to go a long way as far as us staying on top of our game going into next season and not hitting a sophomore slump. So let's just continue to add to this team. Give Dan Quinn another exciting defensive option to attack the great quarterbacks in this division. Now, with Sam Darnold, I don't think that Minnesota believes him. I don't think that Minnesota looks at him and saying, we can go from a wild card exit to a Super Bowl contender overnight in 1 year. He's a good quarterback, right? He's just not great. Now, that's the question these teams are going to have to ask themselves. Do we need a guy that can just keep us in the mix for the next couple years? Or do we need a guy that can help us win right now? I don't believe Sam Darnold's going to elevate his ceiling, but I do think that Minnesota looks at their situation and says, we need J.J. McCarthy to be fully healthy and to be ramping up as if he were to play as a starter for a full year, kind of like what Jordan Love did for a couple years there in Green Bay. I think he's behind in his recovery process, and I think Kevin O'Connell was talking about that at the combine, where they need a quarterback next year. They're just not sure it's going to be J.J. McCarthy. So why not? Let's bring a guy back in Sam Darnold. He's comfortable in this system. You know that you're able to communicate him in different ways than you were if you bring another quarterback into the mix. I do think that Minnesota brings him back on, let's say, a 2 to 3 year deal. But I don't believe that another team is going to go out there and pay him $40 million a year. If there were a team, I do believe it's going to be the Raiders. Now, this would be kind of hey, we don't believe in Cam Ward. We don't believe in Shador Sanders. Or we don't believe that we're going to be able to get them in the draft, whether if we trade for them or not, here in April. So I do believe that Tom Brady would be in the ear of Pete Carroll. He would be in the ear of Chip Kelly and would say, we need a quarterback, right? We can't waste a year. We need a guy right now. And hey, this is a guy that can help elevate some of these younger players around him. So when we do find that next quarterback, Sam Darnold's going to be a nice bridge option. So I do believe Minnesota is going to be the place where he stays, let's say on a 2-year max deal, or the Raiders. If the Minnesota Vikings decide it doesn't matter who we have at quarterback, we're going to dominate regardless. I think Chip Kelly looks at him and says he's a veteran, he's a leader, and he's a great quarterback that protects the football unless he's in the playoffs. So we're going to bring him into Vegas, and he's going to be able to, I guess, keep this offense and this team in the games, which is where their defense can take them over the top. Sam Darnold, Minnesota, Vegas, let's move on. And when we talk about receivers, there's a couple good ones out there this year. T. Higgins, his name was out there, but now he's franchise tagged and back with the organization. Cooper Kupp is not a pending free agent, but it's been well known that the Rams are trying to move some of these veterans, whether if it's Matthew Stafford or a former Triple Crown winner, Super Bowl MVP winner in Cooper Kupp, a cornerstone for this franchise as far as how they rebuilt this organization and eventually, again, went to the top of the mountain and won a Super Bowl. I don't know why they're looking to trade a guy like Cooper Kupp. I understand he's had injury concerns. I understand that his production has kind of fallen off the last year or so. But at the end of the day, I just think that there's some players and organizations that you shouldn't trade. I mean, look at the Miami Heat, for example, in the NBA world. You just don't trade Udonis Haslem, right? Even though he wasn't the greatest player of all time, you just don't trade him. Kind of like when they eventually traded Dwayne Wade, that's just a player that you just don't trade. Like Kobe with the Lakers, Magic with the Lakers, Jordan with the Bulls. You just don't trade certain players because they mean so much to an organization. Cooper Kupp has done wonders for this organization over the last 5 years. And just because he's dealt with some injuries, you want to trade him? There should be some basic rationale when you look at some of these players and say, he's done so much where if he doesn't want out, why give him out? Is, I guess, my predict or what I want to say as far as that. But for Cooper Kupp, I do think he stays in LA. He plays this contract out, and then eventually they probably either just let him walk or they do trade him down the line. But at 34 years old, he's got like, what, a year or two left on his deal. Let him play this contract out and then let him decide his future down the line. Now, if he is to be traded, I got a fun option for you guys. An option that is on the opposite conference, the AFC. They have a young, emerging quarterback, Bo Nix. And this is an offense that needs a slot wide receiver. They have the outside guys, right? They have the Cortland Suttons. They have the Devon Vales of the world. But they need a guy that can go in the slot and be the Lance Moore, so to speak, of this offense that Sean Payton likes to copy all what he did in New Orleans. He can bring it over here to Denver. And to get an elite slot wide receiver in a Sean Payton offense with a younger quarterback, that would do wonders. Going to Denver for Cooper Kupp would mean that he's back to being the lead target getter. That would mean that he's back to being a pivotal part on a team that's winning games. And again, it could be a playoff contention. We'll say that. I don't want to say they're a contender, but they're going to be in the mix for the playoffs for however long Cooper Kupp is in Denver. I just think that he's a veteran. Sean Payton loves veterans. He's a willing run blocker in this offense that's going to run the football. I think it makes a lot of sense. Let me know what you guys think down below. But if he's traded, I would love for Denver to get in the mix, to get a guy like that can command the slot and just be a great mouthpiece for a lot of these younger wide receivers that Denver currently has. If you want to talk about veterans, this dude's old. And out of the respect for him, I'm going to get this out of the way right away. I think at 41 years old, I understand Rodgers wants to come back. I think he should just hang it up. For the sake of his career, let's not try and taint your image. I understand that maybe we won't even care about these last couple years when your career is said and done 6 years down the line and you're a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I just don't want to see him in another uniform. If it's not the Jets, if it's not the Green Bay Packers, most notably, I don't want to see this dude suit up for another team in his career. So I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers, hang it up, go out there and just be immortalized, right? Have Green Bay build you a statue, retire your number, and then, hey, 5-6 years down the line, you're going to get a statue in Green Bay, and you're going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. You're going to be the headliner of the class. So for Rodgers, I believe that is his best option. Don't come back and don't have another subpar season and, have the media bash your name for another 25 weeks, right? But if he is going to stay, if he does want to play another year of football, which I believe he does, I believe him going to a team that needs a veteran. They've had a lot of quarterback instability. Go to this team with a lot of young, intriguing options in his offense. In the Pittsburgh Steelers, you have a veteran head coach, a quarterback, a coach that you respect. You have a coach and a team that you beat in the Super Bowl about 12, 15 years ago. Going to Pittsburgh with a great defense, if they can go out there now and use both their draft picks to address maybe weapons offensively, or hey, maybe you just go out there and bring Davante Adams into the mix, this offense has exciting things to look forward to going into next year. And not to mention, Arthur Smith is a quarterback friendly offense. Now, does it have the highest ceiling? No, but it is a quarterback friendly offense. And with guys like George Pickens, a rookie wide receiver that you could bring in, and maybe Davante Adams is in the mix with Pat Fryermuth, with Jalen Ward. Of course, we don't know if we're going to bring back Najee Harris. I think that is exciting. I just worry about him playing in a very physical AFC North division and the fact that he's 41 on a new team. Aaron Rodgers, man, just hang it up and be immortalized, man. I think it's better for all of us fans and for your career in retrospect. We got to talk about him. Again, he was maybe the best receiver, I guess, undeniably, for a good 5-year stretch. But Davante Adams, at 32 years old, is a free agent yet again after being released by the Jets just a few days ago. Now, he's on the market. He's got to go to a team that needs a number one wide receiver because Adams still has a good 3 to 4 years left in the tank. I think that Green Bay, a reunion there, a team that has had players come out and say, we need a true number one wide receiver. Davante Adams goes there, and not only is he a true number one wide receiver, he's going to be welcomed by the fans. Jordan Love's going to love him, no pun intended, and it gives this team an elevated ceiling going forward. He's going to have the opportunity to play a pivotal role on a team that's ready to contend for a championship now in the Green Bay Packers. So he goes to that offense. They got Adams. They got, of course, Christian Watson coming off an injury, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Josh Jacobs at the running back position. This offense is exciting for Jordan Love going into next year as long as they can draft an offensive lineman or two. I like that fit. A reunion. The city loves you. Again, it's a situation where if he plays a couple good years, he could also get his jersey retired on one of the most prestigious organizations in the league. Now, if he doesn't go to Green Bay, you got a lot of options, right? You can go to San Francisco, who needs a number one wide receiver. And then, of course, they're a contending level team. You can go to the Rams to just continue to add to that mix. And, of course, you're in the LA weather. You can go to the Chargers. They need a number one wide receiver. I know it's a run-focused offense, but hey, Jim Harbaugh is a great players coach. He's going to make sure Davante gets the football, and you have Justin Herbert as your quarterback. Again, his job's going to be the easiest it's been in years. And for him to go to LA, nice weather with the Chargers, they need you. That could be an intriguing option. Now, the other one I've seen floating out there is the Baltimore Ravens. And that's going to be my prediction there. Lamar needs a number one wide receiver. The GM has come out in interviews this year, in this offseason, and has said, we've built a really good team. We've even found our franchise quarterback, but we've struggled to find that number one wide receiver ever since Anquan Bolden left town. Zay Flowers is great, but he's primarily a slot wide receiver. You got Andrews, who's taking a step back. Likely should take a step up next year. But outside of that, you're looking at Justice Hill and Rashad Bateman as receiving options. No shade to them, but they should just be third down guys or, hey, last resort guys. So if you're the Ravens, hey, you got Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. If you can address this offensive line in the draft, let's go out there and get Davante Adams. He's the number one wide receiver for this team next year. Whether if it's down the field, contested catch situations, he still might be the best route runner in the game. If not, he's in the top tier when we talk about overall wide receivers. He fits a lot of voids for this Baltimore Ravens offense, and I think for Davante, you go to a contending team, you can contribute, and you're probably going to get a nice payday along with it. So Baltimore's my prediction there. Now, here is the best remaining free agents on the offensive end. Of course, T. Higgins and Trey Smith recently got franchise tagged. At the quarterback position, you got Justin Fields, you got Russell Wilson, you got Kirk Cousins, a lot of veterans out there, as well as the guys we mentioned earlier in the video. Aaron Jones coming off of a pretty good year. He is a pending free agent, as well as Najee Harris at the running back position. Now, Chris Godwin, Stephon Diggs, two veteran wide receivers that are coming off of pretty serious knee injuries. They're going to need some time to recover. I do think Godwin ends up back in Tampa Bay. He's one of those players like Cooper Kupp. He should be a Tampa Bay for lifer. Um, and for Stephon Diggs, I don't know where he goes because I don't think Houston is necessarily looking to bring him back. And if he does, how much money is he going to want? Because you know Diggs is going to want his money. Drew Dalman, of course, one of the most underrated centers in the game. He could desperately be needed back there in Atlanta, and I think they're going to take care of him. I think he will get a pretty nice payday. And to talk about desperately needed, the Ravens are going to need Ronnie Stanley back on that left side, man. So the Ravens got a big offensive line acquisition in front of them. On the defensive end, you got a lot of Eagles, man. Josh Sweat, Zach Bond. There's a Malik Williams, the defensive tackle, or Milton Williams, excuse me. I get those names mixed up. Outside of that, Khalil Mack, Hassan Reddick. Don't forget about Hassan Reddick, man. He had a season with like 15 sacks before all this contract hiatus happened. Khalil Mack, of course, looking to come back to a contender for one more shot at a ring. And talking about some teams that have been in contention for some rings, the Chiefs, Nick Bolton, their defensive MVP in their last Super Bowl. He is a pending free agent. Interested to see what happens there. Charvarius Ward, for a team that has been to the Super Bowl a lot, for the Niners, is a pending free agent. I do think he ends up back in San Francisco. And then from Minnesota, Byron Murphy. Are you going to take care of him? I think he's one of the top 10 guys on the board this year. And Javon Holland, I don't think he ends up back in Miami. I want to see where he goes, but I don't think Miami's going to pay him. They're in a bit of a salary cap situation. Interested to see where he goes. I think he could fit in a lot of different places. I just don't know where. So I'm interested to see where Javon Holland goes. A guy that doesn't get his respect, but he's a very talented player, of course, at the safety position. One of the best in the game. But that's it. Episode 259, NFL free agency predictions. Don't forget to drop yours in the comments section. And hey, if you made it to this point, subscribe to the channel, man. We're approaching 18,000 subscribers, and we can't get there without you. So again, love you guys. See you guys next time.